央视新闻的网友，大家中午好。我现在所处的位置就是陕西洋县的朱鹮人工繁育中心，也是朱鹮的种源基地。有100多只朱鹮生活在这里，它们中优秀的个体会经过一些野化的训练，然后作为备用种源，从这里向外扩散。其实从1981年
Back in 1981, we had only 7 of them, and until now we have more than 11,000 of them. So for the existing crested ibises, they come from this very spot. They get out of the Qingli mountain area to every corner of the world. You can see they have white feathers and they have the red face. It's the level 1 protected wildlife species in China, and they are very elegant. In order to give you more knowledge about the habits of the crested ibises as well as the artificial breeding knowledge, I have invited Duan Wenbing, a person in charge in this breeding center. Welcome to our program. Could you please share with us more information about this pair of the crested ibis? They have already been matched. They have not yet reached the age of mating, and they are the result of our artificial breeding. They are brothers instead of a couple. And they are yet young birds. They have not yet reached the age of adulthood. And you can tell their age by the face color. Currently, they are demonstrating a more orange-like color on their face. And the older the crested ibises become, and the redder their faces would be. And you can also see the color demonstrated also on the feet part. For an outsider, I cannot tell their gender. How can you determine that they are brothers instead of a couple? For the female and the male birds, they are in the similar body shape. But because we are working around them every day, and also for the other experienced breeders, they can tell the difference through their daily habits and also their characters. For the male ones, in comparison with the female ones, you can see a bigger angle at the point of their beak. And those two, they are brothers, so both of them, they have a very big curved line at the point of their beak. Because I come to this area every day and I can do the observation every day thanks to my job, so it's quite easy for me to tell the difference between a female one and also a male one. What about these one? This is one female and one male. For the matching of the crested ibises, what is the principle to follow? First of all, you have to separate the family members. For example, brothers and sisters should not be matched. And we also have to make the determination based on our daily observation. For one female and one male, are they getting along? If both of them are quite aggressive, then they cannot make a match. So two important points. First of all, you have to avoid the family members matching, and also the two should get along very well. You have the basis of the family ties and also the basis of the emotion. If the two can get along very well and they are not from the same family, then there's a higher possibility ratio of their good matching. So we still have a lot of time. Later on, we can share with you more details. The viewers Today we are sharing with you the success story about how we can bring this population of crested ibises from only 7 to up to more than 11,000. They have heavy coats, naturally made heavy coats, so they are not afraid of winter season. In the wild, they have to find food by themselves, but because they are raised inside this breeding center, so they don't have to worry about the food intake. We will give them food, and later they can take a break. And they can bury their head into their wings, into the feathers. For example, one of them, as you can see from the camera, is actually burying the head in the feathers, and this one is actually taking a break, is taking a nap. Taking a nap is also a very effective method for the bird to keep the energy and reduce the energy consumption. Every day we feed the birds 2 times. They are not vegans. They eat meat, for example, the small fish and insects. For this area is dedicated to the artificial breeding. I've also heard that in our conservation center, you have an area dedicated to the wildlife development. Today we can breed them as one of the methods to do the restoration as well as the conservation. Because keeping those crested ibises in the cage is not our final goal. We would like to bring them back to the nature to make sure that they can fly freely one day in the blue sky. If we keep them always in a cage, then it will be difficult for them to learn the knowledge about food searching and natural mating, etc. So that's why we have created this separated area to train them, to give them some opportunities of exercise, and they can practice by themselves how to find food by themselves and how to attract the other half, the significant other of the crested ibises. And for your breeding center, it's like a school of the elites. For the best ones, they would be trained to find the food and to mate and also to reproduce the next generation of crested ibises. And gradually, they can also build up the capacity of living alone in the nature. Back in 1981, in the whole world, there's only a small population of 7 wild crested ibises discovered by scientists in the Yangxian County of Shaanxi Province. Until today, in the whole world, the population of the crested ibises has exceeded more than 10,000. That is a very big leap forward. We have also prepared a video clip for all of you to see. Through this video, you can see the history of conservation of crested ibises over the past 4 decades. In May 1981, in Yaojiagou forest, expert Liu Yingzhen from the Chinese Institute of Wildlife Researches has discovered 7 wild crested ibises. I was marching on a slope, and I noticed one bird in white color flying from the east. And when it's above my head, I noticed the red color. I was so excited. This was the photo taken in 1981, and it's published for the first time publicly in the world. It's in a magazine of Japan. Yangxian County, I believe it's like a Noah's Ark for the crested ibis. On the 9th day of the discovery of the wild crested ibis, we have created in Yaojiagou the first conservation station. After 4 decades development until now, we have built new stations of conservation, but still we have kept this old site of this conservation station for the Crested Ibises. We have some documents and also the photo. On the photo, you can tell that 4 young people, they are doing the research. I'm also in the photo. We have to take the telescope and also the parameters to study the rules of activities of the Crested Ibises. We have to tell the altitude as well as the record making. Mr. Lu has also witnessed this whole track of 4 decades of protection and the conservation of Crested Ibises. First of all, we have to ensure their security. Where the Crested Ibises would arrive, we should also be there. This is a photo taken by myself in 1994. On the photo, we have actually witnessed 24 Crested Ibises searching food on the spot. 24 was also the total number of the population by then. And we have also experienced ups and downs over the past 4 decades. For example, our experts, they have coped with the improvement of the environment, the fight against the natural enemies, as well as the farmland competition. For example, in old days, we noticed that just before the maturing of the baby bird, the egg would be broken by the parent bird, so we have taken measures. And we have also coated the trunk of the tree where is located the nest of the Crested Ibis, so the snake would not mount up. After 4 decades of dedicated efforts, today we have increased the total number of the population from 7 to more than 10,000, and the habitat has been enlarged from less than 5 square kilometers to 16,000. And today, all the family members of the Crested Ibises you can find, they are the offsprings of the original 7 wild ones. We hope that we can continue to make efforts to enlarge the conservation of the Crested Ibises, and also we can also offer more science-based references for the protection of the population. Okay, dear viewers, just now we watched a video together which has shared with us the dedicated efforts over the past 4 decades to protect the population. And here we have the semi-wild habitat for the training of the Crested Ibises. Because today, for all the population of the Crested Ibises kept in our breeding center, they are not yet restored to a wildlife status, so we can only train them in this semi-wild habitat. They are very dependent on the forest ecosystem and also the wetland ecosystem. They will find food in the wetland, and they will also make the nest upon the trees. On the trees, we have put the marks of the numbers. Again, they will find the food in the wetland, and next year they will start to mate and also make up their own nest on the tree branches. Over there, we also noticed another bird. It's also a white bird. It's called the egret, the little egret. But they cannot get in because we have the nest. In this area, we encourage the Crested Ibises to find food by themselves. Of course, we will give them nutrition supplements, but the major goal is to train them to build up the capacity to find by themselves the food. It's also like the parents raising the kids. One day we have to urge the kids to feed themselves and find the food by themselves. Inside, we have already invited more than 60 Crested Ibises. Next year, they will be free to make that by themselves. And it's the natural mating, so without interference of the human beings. And if they can get along and they can form a couple, next year by February and March, they can build up their nest on the tree branches. From time to time, we will go inside the semi-closed habitat to see if there is any abnormal situation. And with the entrance of human beings, the Crested Ibises they will also take off. This is a way for us to see whether they have this capacity to avoid risks and danger, whether they could take off immediately when they discover something abnormal. For the younger generation of Crested Ibises, they can start to find a significant other by the end of the year, and they can also have the best color of the feathers. And later on, when we see their feathers become gray again, this is a moment of their reproduction season. To guarantee this whole process, we have to, first of all, guarantee their food intake and nutrition. We guarantee the quantity and also the quality of their food intake. Usually throughout the year, we give them little fish. And during the winter time, to guarantee the nutrition supply, we will give them beef and also with the other nutrient supplements. For example, calcium. Calcium should also be added to their daily diet. For the keeper, he's inside. You also have to clean the pool for the bird. This is like the playground of an elite school. We have two areas of the wetland. We also have another separate area of the food intake. The Crested Ibises would live together. But when there's the food, there's the competition. Sometimes the Crested Ibises have to compete with the other birds, for example, the little egrets. And also, inside the population of the Crested Ibises, they also have to compete one with another. So currently, we have to help the weaker ones. Thank you very much for this introduction. We get to know more knowledge about the artificial breeding as well as the conservation measures, and also how we can train the Crested Ibises in order to be adapted to the nature again. According to the statistics, starting by 1990s until now, we have exported more than 300 of the Crested Ibises to other provinces of China and to other Asian countries. So today, those 300 plus Crested Ibises, they are flying freely above the east part of Asia. Wherever you can find a Crested Ibis today in the world, that one must be related to the original 7 found in Yangxian County in our province. The Crested Ibises are referred to as the Oriental Gem, and they are also very loyal to the significant other. Once they are mated, they will not leave the other part. when there's the intruder, then the third bird would also communicate with the couple with their beak. It's like the kissing. And the original couple, especially, they would kiss one with another with the beak in order to give the message to the intruder. Artificial breeding has been very effective, but still in comparison with the natural mating, the success ratio is relatively low among artificial breeding. And the Crested Ibises, once mated, would be very loyal to the other half. When there is the intruder, the female bird would not leave behind the husband. For the nest making or for the food intake, the Crested Ibises will live peacefully with the other birds, and also they can demonstrate a peaceful spirit when they discover the fish or the other food. When there is the other kind of bird, for example, the little egret, grabbing their food away, they will not start a fight. They will touch around in order to find other food resources. They have very good character. That's why they are so much appreciated by human beings. However, in the past, they have become a critically endangered species due to the degradation of the forest and also the overuse of pesticides and fertilizers in their habitats. Dear viewers of CCTV News, my name is Yang Yongqing. I'm the journalist of CCTV. I'm now sharing with you this live program at the breeding station of Crested Ibises. This area is located by the wetland. It's also the northest point for the artificial breeding of Crested Ibises. It's very cold outside. It's almost -15. How can the Crested Ibises survive in this cold weather? We have invited Mr. Fang Wei, the chief of the conservation station. Good afternoon, everyone. So maybe we can walk around to demonstrate to our viewers this whole area. We have introduced the 20 Crested Ibises from Xi'an City. And now the 20 of them are living inside this cage, the net cage. So Mr. Fang, could you please share with us more information about their age group? For cage number 9, 6 Crested Ibises are born in 2023. In cage number 8, 2 of them are born this year, and 2 from previous year and 2 from the year 2021. For the number 7 cage, they are from 2020 and 2018 and 2019. For those newly born ones, the Crested Ibises born this year, they are still babies, less than 1 year old. For these young birds, in comparison with the adult birds, the adult birds who have more than 3 years in age, is it too difficult for them to get adapted to the locale? For the newly born baby Crested Ibises born, for example, in 2023, They are kept in the cage number 8 and number 9. They are very friendly with the keepers. They are not afraid of the keepers. To the contrary, the adult birds, they are more vigilant and they can be easily frightened. The keepers, they would be dressed in the same way every day. And they would be around every day to feed and to take care of the crested ibises. The crested ibises, they are also very sensitive to the colors. They are very sensitive to the bright colors. And also they are sensitive to unfamiliar faces. That's why we have to walk very slowly in order not to frighten all those adult birds. If they are frightened, then they would have a panic attack, then they would fly around and they would be colliding with the nest cage facade and they would hurt themselves. Now we are almost inside this cage. In Yangxian County, we have made the report. We noticed that they have a very huge cage, but here you have separate spaces, like the separate rooms. What is the consideration? Here is the breeding center. It's still at a very early age of the breeding, so it's not yet the moment for their training. You have mentioned in Yangxian County, they have this very big cage. That is for the purpose of the training and habit building and capacity building of these crested ibises. But here, first of all, we have to guarantee their survival. Until next year, like between February and April, there would be the incubation, and we can have the new baby birds. Here we also have to consider the weather conditions and also geographic traits. Once the population of 20 crested ibises are adjusted to the local conditions, and we can gradually enlarge the scale of the cage. And now the keeper is preparing the food. Every day we feed them twice. It's usually between 9 to 10 a.m. and 3:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. We will feed them the loaches. We pour the live loaches inside. For each one of them, every meal they would take 150 grams. We also give them worms and also beef. And sometimes we also feed them the earthworms. This diet structure would be readjusted on a regular basis, like Nanning 1. During the introduction of the crested ibises, you have prepared a greenhouse. When the outdoor temperature is -15 to -20, then we have to take some measures to keep the crested ibises warm. We have the cold water and warm water system. This is an empty cage, so we can go inside and also have a look. We have this very big basin. This is the inside of the greenhouse, a warm house. We have two water supply systems, one for cold water and another for warm water. This is a way to guarantee the normal supply of food for the Crested Ibises. What is the heating source? We have the floor heating and we also have the natural gas heating system. So that we can have a very warm floor. We can allow very small error of temperature variation because recently we have significant temperature drop in this area. When outside temperature is between -15 to -20, inside on the floor, it's at least 0 or -1. The objective is to keep the temperature stable. And in this space is between 2 to 4 degrees Celsius. In the morning, it's around in the morning, it's around 0, and now it's about 4 degrees Celsius. When outside is -13 degrees. Here we have the floor heating. Not because the Crested Ibises are afraid of the cold, but to keep the water running and keep the loaches alive. If it's too cold, then the water would be frozen and then the loaches cannot be surviving, and that is impossible for the Crested Ibises to have the food intake. To guarantee the normal food intake and also to guarantee the daily bathing of Crested Ibises, we have constructed this area of the greenhouse. Because every day the Crested Ibises should also take baths. And they will take several rounds of baths during the day, from 8 to 9. Every day we will keep an eye on the Crested Ibises. And the number of their bathing would also vary from day to day. During the daytime, we can directly stand by the cage to observe their habits. And during the nighttime, we can also use the monitoring system. We can watch them through the screen. In this cold day, they still wash themselves. They still take the baths. So they have very good cleaning habits. They will not be impacted by the cold weather. After the bath, they will continue to live normally. This is the result of our observation. It's been more than 50 days that this group of 20 Crested Ibises arrived. Have you noticed any changes, for example, with their body weight, with their body size, or in other aspects of their life? They have better-looking feathers, and they have also grown in size. And they have thicker feathers today. As to their food intake, they eat more every day. And we have also observed their nighttime activity. And we notice that they are 100% used to the local conditions. They are adapted to the local conditions. And this is the feed room. These are worms. And why the worms? Because just now we said that you feed the loaches to the Crested Ibises. Because we have to diversify their diet, we give them the small fish, the small shrimps. And because it's very hard for us to find the fish and shrimps here in the Shaanxi Province, so we will give them loaches instead. And we also add up some worms. The apples are for the worms. The apple is the food of the worms. What other food will you give to the Crested Ibises? And also beef, you mentioned. Yes, indeed. This is the processed beef. For every meal, it's 50 grams per head of Crested Ibis. And this bag of beef is for one meal of the total population of 20 Crested Ibis. It's not pure beef. Yes, we have added the radish, vegetables, and also the wheat. We have done some food processing. It's the cooked beef or the raw beef. It's the raw ones. For the processed food, we will first of all break them apart into small, fine particles, and then we will roast them. With all these measures, we would like to diversify the food intake of the Crested Ibises to guarantee that every day they can have sufficient supply of vitamins and other nutrients. You also have the recipe for the Crested Ibis. We keep a record. For example, today we give them beef, and tomorrow it will be a kind of worms. This is the alternative use of beef and worms to the Crested Ibises. Every day we keep a record of that. In the northern part of Shaanxi Province, it's very cold outside. And for the loaches, one of the favorite foods of our Crested Ibises, is it easy for you to find the loaches? Here you have all those loaches here. We also have different types of the loaches. With different food intake, the loaches will demonstrate different colors. Well, every day, each head of the Crested Ibis would take 300 grams, and that's about 30 loaches. Because every meal is 150 grams, that is around 10 to 20 loaches, so we will weigh the loaches. Every male, every crested ibis, that would be 150 grams of food. Now I'd like to show you another place. Previously, we mentioned that the crested ibises are afraid of people. So only the keepers are allowed to go inside the cages according to the timetable to clean the place, to give the food. For the other moments of the day, it's forbidden for people to visit the cages. But still, we have this monitoring room. We have the big screen through which we can keep a close eye on the daily life of those crested ibises. So every day you also have to keep a record, right? Yes, every 3 hours we have to note down the development of those birds. It's the first time for us to move them to a place this to the north, and first time for them to know this new area, and that's why we have to keep a record every 3 hours. This is the cage number 8. They are eating the loaches. We have 2 from 2021, 2 from 2022, and another 2 from 2023. Why is that? Because it takes 2 years for the gender maturing of the crested ibises. We encourage them to find the mating part by themselves. We keep an eye on their food intake and also the wandering and also the feces status of the crested ibises. From their feces, we can tell whether those crested ibises are healthy or not. Do they have a health problem? Every day, we would stay in front of this monitoring screen in order to know the exact development of the crested ibises. The reason why you have introduced this group of 20 crested ibises is to do the artificial breeding and reproduction. During the Ming and the Qing dynasty, we have also left the record of keeping of crested ibises in this area. So what is the purpose of the breeding of the crested ibises? We would like to demonstrate the biodiversity of this area, and also it's a recognition of the improvement of ecosystem in Yulin City. And third, we would like to bring the crested ibises to their historical distribution places. Because here is the northeast point of breeding of crested ibises. It's a new trial, and during the day and the night, the temperature difference is very big. And here we have similar temperature traits with Erdos in the Mongolia Autonomous Region. Sometimes the temperature can fall below -15 or even -20. According to you, are the crested ibises afraid of the cold? I don't think so. Based on our daily observation, during only 2 nights, we noticed that some of the crested ibises are hidden in the greenhouse, in the warm house. So we can draw the conclusion that in most of the times, the crested ibises are not afraid of the cold. Is there a success story of mating of the crested ibises? Can we expect any new babies next year? Now we have noticed in the cage 5 and 6, there are 2 pairs, so namely 4 heads of crested ibises mating. And also in cage 7 and cage 8, 2 more possible couples, but still we are not sure of that. Our keepers, they are observing closely the signals of the mating. When they start to mate, is it a sign that the crested ibises are getting used to the area? Yes. And we can also tell the sign by their cries. Thank you very much, Mr. Fang. In history, the crested ibises are migrant birds, and they will live to the south of the Qing Mountain. But in recent years, other countries like Japan and ROK, they would like to help to restore the habit of migration of the crested ibises. Here in Yulin, they are doing some efforts in order to get the crested ibises to the north of the Shaanxi Province to get them back to their original habit of migration. We bring them to the original birthplace. Thank you very much for staying with us. We have significantly improved success ratio of the survival of the baby crested ibises. It's up to 97%, and their growth rate is higher. During 1 month, the weight increase of the crested ibises has also improved. Through our conservation efforts, we have brought a lot of crested ibises to the nature. In southern part of China, we have created the wildlife center for the crested ibises, and we hope that through our efforts, we could gradually bring the population back to their original birthplaces. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mao Jun, journalist of CCTV. I'm now at the natural reserve of Zhejiang Province, Jiangsu Province. When we talk about the Yancheng city of Jiangsu Province, we will talk about the red-crowned crane. But this time, they are not alone anymore because they would be accompanied by 20 crested ibises. The 20 crested ibises are introduced into this natural reserve in order to have several months of training before their return to nature. Could they be really adjusted and adapted to the nature here? Today, we're about to give you the answer. We have invited Mr. Wang, person in charge of this program of crested ibises. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wang Kaihong, person in charge of the research program of the crested ibises. Madam Wang is in charge of the introduction, training, and return of the 20 crested ibises. I don't know whether you can hear the sounds of the birds, and they are also flying in flocks above our heads. This is a significant wonder. But first of all, could you please share with us the general picture of the 20 crested ibises? In two groups, we introduced the 20 crested ibises, first in June and later in August. After 3 months of training, by 27th of November, they are returned to nature. So the 20 crested ibises brought here, they are 10 couples, not exactly. We have actually selected 10 female ones and 10 male ones, but before coming to this area, they are not mated, so they are not yet couples. Talking about the historical distribution, the coastline wetlands has become a habitat of the crested ibises. This is also one favorite spot for the migrant birds. Back in 1981, we had only 7 crested ibises in the whole world, but this year, nowadays, we have surpassed the 10,000. But still in the coast area, we are still at an early age for the return of crested ibises back to the nature in the Yangxian city. We have created this reserve for the crested ibises, still an endangered species today. We would like to better the ecosystem and to improve the biodiversity in this area. We also have the red-crowned crane here. We have observed them. Some of the heads of the red-crowned cranes have reproduced a lot of baby cranes. And a lot of them have also picked up their habits of migration. We sincerely hope that the crested ibises would follow the good example of the red-crowned cranes. Here, I'd like to show you a very big area of training with 1,200 square meters. What about the height? 18 meters, to make sure that the crested ibises would have sufficient room to stretch their wings. We have different stages of this experiment. First of all, we make sure they can get adapted to the nature, and secondly, they could fly freely in nature, and thirdly, they could protect themselves in nature. Now I'd like to show you more details about this training area. We have the iron chains and also another curtain. Once we are inside this cage of training, we can find something new. This is a higher ground. When we move forward, it will be like the wetlands. The crested ibises, when they are brought back to nature, they would be wearing something. So, Madam Wang, could you please show us this part? It's only 20 grams, 22 grams. It's very light in comparison with the body weight of the crested ibises. This is one equipment to trace the trajectory of flight of the crested ibises. It's also connected to the Beidou satellite system. Through this tracker, we can know where the crested ibises is, what is the temperature in the environment, what is the height of their flying. With our phone, we can know where the crested ibises are. We would know where they are arriving and what is the environment like around them, how they are living today for each of the crested ibises. We can see a lot of spots. And it can also show the trajectory of the crested ibises. For the majority of the flock of the birds, they are not very far from here. We have also prepared some boards of information. So maybe Madam Wang, you can give us more explanation. The first one is the satellite image transmitted back by our system. We have countless spots here. Those spots are collected by our tracker. As you can see, they are not very far from the training center with a radius of about 5 kilometers. This is another one with the number 6 crested ibis. It's been very far once from the training center to the south of the wetland. And he's playing around and also searching food to the south of the training center. And he has also visited the paddy rice field. What about this one? This one has not traveled very far. What about the total exercise, the distance of each head of the bird is around 10 kilometers. For example, for the bird number 3, he's been flying around this training center. For the artificially bred birds, they have not been very far from the training center. We can have a guess. First of all, they have not accumulated a lot of experience about living alone in nature. And once they are returned to nature, where can they spend the night? You can find a lot of tall trees in this area. They like the tall trees and they will take a break during the nighttime on the tree branches. Have we discovered any natural enemies to the crested ibises? Yes, we have some mammals that would be the predators of the crested ibises. But luckily, those mammals cannot mount up to the trees, so the crested ibises can safely spend the night on the tree branches. This time during the return mission, some of the crested ibises are reluctant to leave the training center. They would not follow the flock of the crested ibises. So the keepers have no choice but to get them back to the habitats, back to the training center. What about their food intake in nature? We have a very good condition of biodiversity in the wetland area, in the coast area. We have different kinds of fish, and we also have the shells. A lot of choice for the crested ibises, so we are not worried about their food. Have you studied their food intake in nature? Yes, indeed. We have analyzed their feces, from which we can tell what food intake they have taken. For example, some local fish, some shells. So they have diversified choices as food. Once they are back in nature, they have taken ordinary food in the wetlands. We have also prepared some examples of the food for crested ibises. Some worms here. They like to have the live worms, some fresh worms. For crested ibises, we don't have to worry about their food intake in nature. Sometimes in the cold days, in shallow water, we add some supplement of food. One more thing, this year we have carried out another experiment. We find the exercise partners for the crested ibises, that is the little egrets. According to our studies, crested ibises get along very well with the little egrets. They are mutually complementary one to another. The crested ibises, they are not very quick in reaction, but the little egrets, they are very vigilant. But for the crested ibises, they are very good at food searching. Usually they would touch around to find the food, but for the little egrets, they can use their eyes to detect the food. When the crested ibises are touching around for food, the little egrets would stay on guard and they would be very vigilant. Once they detect some abnormal phenomenon or they discover some dangerous signs, that they would directly fly away, and that is also a message sent to the crested ibises. This is another tracker for the little egrets, smaller in size in comparison with those attached to the crested ibises. For the pink ones, they are for the little egrets, and for the violet ones is for the trajectory of the number 5 crested ibis. So they have a lot of trajectories superimposed. They are partners in the training and nature-based exercise. Next year, by spring, we expect that our crested ibises would also follow the little egrets to migrate a little bit to other areas of the country. This is our hope, and it's also one innovative action taken by our team. It's our best hope. Sincerely, we hope that next year they would make it. And maybe you would be very curious about the training center, but we could move around to show more details to you. We have this small slope here. Why have we decided to train the crested ibises here? Over there, we have a shallow ditch. When there is seawater mounting up, the water would be flooded into this ditch. Why is that? Because we have to mimic the ups and downs of the waves for our crested ibises. When there is the flooding and ebbing of the tides, it can bring the food to the beach. And for the crested ibises, they were brought up in inland China, and it's the first time for them to notice the flooding and ebbing of the seawater. So with the ditch, we can train them. And during the nighttime, we will also play some soundtracks of some predators and natural enemies of the crested ibises to make them vigilant. Have you noticed their bathing moment? Yes, of course, that is quite ordinary. With the flooding, the crested ibises would rush to the seawater. They would do some seawater bathing. They are fond of it. Most of the crested ibises would like to have a bathing in the seawater when it's flooding. And when it's the ebbing time of the tides, then a lot of food would be left on the beach. For example, you can discover lots of small holes. Then the crested ibises would also rush to the beaches to touch around in those little holes to catch some food for themselves. So very rapidly, they get used to this environment. Over the past 6 months or so, Madam Wang has followed the whole mission of return of crested ibises. For example, the introduction of the birds here, and also the training, the observation and tracking of the flock of the birds, and also the cooperation between the little egrets and the crested ibises. First of all, we hope that more crested ibises would be reproduced. Second, we hope that all of the birds could survive in nature. And third, we hope those crested ibises will fly to a longer distance, to a farther away place. In history, we have the records that the crested ibises have lived in the coastal area in the eastern part of China, and they could also reach further to other regions. We really hope that in the future you can bring to us more good news. Thank you for being with us in our program, Madam Wang. So previously, we mentioned that we have carried out a lot of studies in different regions in China and also in foreign countries like the ROK and Japan. They have also kept the researches going. So between our 3 countries, we have taken the relay to keep our crested ibises safe and sound. So for my part, it's from the Shaanxi Province and the Yangxian City. I'd like to give the floor to my colleagues to share with you what is going on in Japan and also in the ROK to raise and also train the crested ibises. China has given a flock of crested ibises to the ROK. Today, this breeding center has brought more than 500 heads of crested ibises to this world. In the past, everywhere in Japan you can find the wild crested ibises, but later on they have extincted. And then in 1981, in the Yangxian County of China, people have discovered again 7 wild crested ibises. And since then, we have started the China-Japan cooperation on the conservation of crested ibises. Thanks to Yang Yang and Yo-Yo, the two Crested Ibises, we can have this very good development of Crested Ibises in Japan. We are very thankful to the birds.